Okay, so the next one is a nevus, and this one's pretty complicated. There's a lot of information, so it might be reasonable to add to this one or divide it up or something. But so in this room, so we've got nevus, so we've got Beavis from Beavis and Butthead, and he's locked up right now in this room. Why is he locked up? Well, the Sheik locked him up, and he locked him up for making out on the floor again. So he was tonguing some girl on the floor, and that's not allowed. So he's locked up. So this does not happen on the tongue or the floor of the mouth either. Just like the oral and labial melatotic, whatever, macule. This Sheik, I say Sheik to help you think of Theeks. So he's a Sheik, like an Arabic guy. He's a mogul, and he owns 5 of these melanocyte factories. So a Theek is a group, clusters of 5 or more epidermal melanocytes. And so he's a pretty rich guy. He's a really good guy. He's got a halo around his head. So the Sheik is pretty benevolent, and that's shown by the fact that he locked up Beavis. So his factories are rolling. They're obviously melanocytes are going to make melanin, but in the drawing I have them producing hammers to remind you that this is a hamartoma. So this is a benign neoplasm or hamartoma. So then I've got they're supposed to be kind of roads. I just drew them as lines, but it's kind of like the idea is that you're driving away from the factory. And so you're driving away from the Sheik's factory, and you're also going to drive by the Kraft macaroni and cheese factory. So just make sure you remember it's Mac, so it's that's supposed to say like macules, and that was also seen in the oral labial melanotic macules as well. I had a little mac and cheese sign above the melanocyte in there. I don't know that I mentioned that. Okay, so you drive by the so it's like you're on the freeway and you drive by you're leaving the factories, the Sheik factories, and you drive by the macaroni and cheese factory at the junction. So this is kind of like you're getting on the junction of the freeway and you drive by the macaroni and cheese factory. So at the junctional epithelium, it's going to be a flat macule. Then you're kind of crossing to a rougher part of town, and so your attention, you're scared, so you're heightened. You've got a raised sense of awareness or whatever. So you've got a raised lesion, and you drive by the pound. It's a kind of a shady dog pound or something. Okay, so compound nevuses are going to be at the junction, junctional epithelium, and compound. So it's going to be kind of right between the epithelium and the dermis. And then you keep driving. The roads get a lot worse, and so they're really kind of wavy and choppy. And I kind of have that representing connective tissue. And then you make it to kind of the dermatologist's office. So we've got a few things. We've got factories, a mac and cheese factory, compound or pound, and then we get to the dermatologist. And the dermatologist, that's supposed to be for dermal or intradermal nevuses or nevi. And then beyond that, so there's a lot of details in this room, but beyond that, it's kind of like the fairgrounds or something that's past the dermatologist. And what you're going to find there is at this fair or whatever, you're going to find a bucking horse with a ginger with big lips. So he's got red. So there's some dude with really big lips. He's got red hair. He's riding a bucking horse, and it's on a giant pallet, like a painting pallet. So this happens on. It's rare to see something like this, so it happens rarely in the mouth, but when it does, it's going to happen on the lips, the gingiva for ginger, and the hard palate. It's kind of convoluted, and this room wasn't the best, but there's a lot of details in this one. Okay, so as you come out of the fairgrounds, we're going to be heading down the other hallway here. And so the next room on the left, you're going to hear a baby crying. So right after you leave the fair, you could even think you left your baby at home, and well, you went on a date, and now your baby's home crying. You need to get home. So you come in, and there's a baby on the ground that's crawling around, and it looks like it has a blue bruise on its back. What are we talking about? We're talking about the blue nevus, which is pretty obvious. Happens on the back side of a baby's butt. Kind of looks like the babysitter might have been beating it, but it's okay. And I guess differential diagnosis would be a child abuse or like a multiple nevi or something. I'll get to that in a second. So the baby is crawling over to a palette. Again, we've got the hard palette, painting palette, and it is just got one symmetrical blotch of paint on the palette, and so this is it's usually a symmetrical lesion when it presents in the mouth, though it rarely does, and it's going to be found on the hard palette. So the person that's in this room is sitting on a chair, and they're physically blue. They look blue, and they're blue because they're depressed, and it's because they just got rejected from their Tinder date. This guy's holding his phone, got his Tinder app out, and he hasn't got any matches, so he's blue. He's sad. And so he's blue. So maybe he's a little cold, so he wants to get warmed up. So we've got, let me see. And lastly, okay, so the Tinder effect is this blue pigment or Tyndall. It's Tyndall. So think Tinder. Tyndall is when the melanin occurs. It's in the deep connective tissue, and as the light comes back to your eye, it scatters the light, and so it appears blue because it's deep in the dermal tissue. So dermal, think thermal. So these melanocytes, this is a true dermal lesion, and these melanocytes, there's two little factories kind of in the corner that are producing thermals, like thermal underwear for, so I've got a picture of a thermal top. So this is a true dermal lesion. And what is it making these thermals from? It's making it from the cotton coming from the spindle. And so histologically under a microscope, it's going to look spindled. And so it's going to have spindly fibers. So I have a spindle making cotton, and then the factories are making thermals out of that. And so true dermal lesion from the melanocytes. Okay, in the next room on the left, we have got a racist pig. Okay, so there is a pig that's got a Ku Klux Klan hat on, and he's smiling evilly as a cross is being burned. So he is a racist pig. We're talking about racial pigmentation. This is obviously going to happen in darker pigmented people, Africans, Mediterranean, Middle East. And so don't get that confused. So the pig is chained to a ginger, a red-headed kid. So even though the kid's a whitey, this doesn't happen in white people. But it does happen on the gingiva, and it's the attached gingiva. That's why he's chained to the pig. So he's attached to the pig. And this red-headed kid is also holding a mushroom or some fungus, and that's because it also happens on the fungiform papillae. So racial pigmentation happens on the attached gingiva and the fungiform papillae. Okay, so the smoke from the cross and the racial pigmentation is going through the vents, and it's billowing out into another room that sits adjacent to this room. This is to show kind of a connection or a differential diagnosis. There's also a door from the racial pigmentation into this room, which is smoker's melanosis. They look a lot the same, but they've got different origins. In this room, so you've got smoke billowing into this room, and there's also a ginger attached to something, but this time it's attached to a lady that's smoking. She's a very nice lady. That's why she has a halo over her head, meaning there's no malignant change, which is counterintuitive here because she smokes. She's smoking, there's smoke billowing into the room. She's also holding a birth control pill package because birth control can cause this as well. So smoking and birth control can cause pigmentation on the anterior attached gingiva. So we've got a ginger kid attached to this woman, and he's sitting on an anthill. He's kind of distressed about it. And so in smoker's melanosis, it's going to look like racial pigmentation in the anterior. It's going to be symmetrical. If you stop smoking, it'll go away. If you keep smoking, it'll stay. And it's stimulated by estrogen. It's another reason why she has the birth control pills. I think that's everything in this room. Okay, so back out down the hall on the left, we have Cafe A Lot spots. There was a connection here with the, this is things that can happen that are not oral. So there was a doorway coming from the pseudoepitheliomatous hyperplasia that was there before. So that's where the sumo wrestlers and Uncle Cecil and Effie the Avox and Joey and Ross, all with Mouthless, they come to the cafe. And this is a place where they can get some food and drinks and stuff, but they don't have to take them orally. So this is an interesting cafe. The main entrance to the cafe is all bright. So it's all bright. There's a lot of lights. You walk in the door, there's a lot of lights. And it's kind of got a really irregular hallway to kind of lead you into the cafe. And so that's supposed to be the coast of Maine outline. And as you kind of weave down this unusual entrance, you walk by two bone pillars into the cafe. And so that's the bones. The Albright syndrome are spots with irregular shape, the jagged outline, and that happens in the bones. On the door of the main entrance cafe, pizza deliveries are not allowed here. So if like the employees want to order pizza, it can't be delivered to the main entrance. It's got to be delivered to the side entrance, and that has meaning in a second. So there's a side entrance to the cafe, which leads you directly into the main cafe room. And there's a little cafe table, and it's got a bunch of spots on the table where people put their coffee mugs. So they got tan coffee spots on the table. So that's one of the symptoms, tan coffee spots. Employees can order pizza and have it delivered to the side here. So we've got a Domino's pizza sitting out on the table, and that's for autosomal dominant. These people, they don't have mouths, and so they are drinking their coffee they get it systemically. It's injected by an IV. So there's a guy sitting there in his couch, and he's got that going. So that just reminds you that it doesn't happen intraorally. It's autosomal dominant. And the mat that the coffee table's on, it's a fibrous mat, and it's got neurons on it. So this is neurofibromatosis. This is a type of Cafe A Lot spots. It's going to have a rounded outline coffee spots, large tan macules. It's autosomal dominant, and it does not occur intraorally. Okay, next to the cafe, down on the left, we have a pretzel shop. And so this pretzel shop is where Addie goes, or Addison's disease. Addie, that's adrenal cortex failure. We've talked about that before. So Addison, or Addie in here, she sneezes a lot, and every time she says achoo or something, she just keeps sneezing, so there's a lot of atch or achoos. And the atch then is going to, or those sneezes is going to stimulate. There's another one of those little melanocyte factories in here, and every time she sneezes, it's going to start producing more melanin. So increased atch, or ACTH, is going to stimulate the production of melanin. She is all darkly colored, and she's extremely skinny because she's emaciated. She's got a large drink because she's dehydrated, and she's holding a pretzel, and she's at the pretzel shop because she has salt cravings and hypotension. The inside of her oral cavity is going to be entirely pigmented, so not just the attached gingiva, but also the whole thing. And you're also going to see darker pigment all over her body, and then under her fingernails. Okay, the next room on the left is kind of just a miscellaneous room, so this could be a number of different things that are causing pigmentation in the oral cavity. And so in this room, we've got a number of things. We've got a pig in there again. We've got it's kind of like the number of animals in this room, I guess. So we've got a pig, we've got a butterfly tacked to the side of the wall like an entomologist would have mounted a specimen. We've got a Pegasus type like horse with wings, and it's got a C brand on its leg. And we have a fish tank with some minnows in it, with some little bicycle decorations in the fish tank. And then we've got a lady that's asleep on the floor holding a birth control packet with a tranquilizer in her leg. And there's some mosquitoes flying around her while she is out cold. So let's explain what all that means. The mosquito is for anti-malarial drugs. They may not be using it for malaria. They could be using it for lupus. Sometimes it helps. So if a patient has lupus and they have pigmentation, it could be caused by an anti-malarial drug like chloroquine. So that's what the mosquito is all about. The needle in the lady's leg that's asleep, it's for tranquilizer or chloropromazine. And then there's the fish tank with the minnow. That's the minocycline, hence the decorations in the fish tank, which are little bikes. So minocycline, which is an antibiotic for acne or perio disease. And you should never, ever give your patient this. And I believe that might be because it causes dyskinesia, like tardive dyskinesia, but I'll double check that. The plaque on the wall that has the butterfly mounted to it, that's Plaquenil, and that's a drug for lupus, for the butterfly rash. And then the Pegasus is another drug, and that C brand on its leg is because it treats hepatitis C. And the pig at the front of the room, I think, is just to help you remember that these are different causes of pigmentation. Okay, now working back the other direction, on the other side of the miscellaneous room, again, we've got a doorway where you have to walk through a mouth, so lips, gingiva, and it's also going to be seen on the hard palate, and this is going to be for like when you biopsy potentially like a potential melanoma. So it's going to be found on the gingiva or the lips or